Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Ruach HaKodesh, Double honors the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who are teaching this truth in sincerity, and shout out the Akims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Ruach HaKodesh, Brakatum. So we may not have to wait till November, December, although that's when more troops will be increasing, right? Because Donald Trump has already declared to Congress that the war with Iran is on. Last week, after he spat it off and said that he's not negotiating with them anymore, that they're scum. But the only scumbags are these Edomites, right? These fucking Amalekites. You know, these pedophiles that run everything, right? They're the only scum of the earth. You know, when you talk about scum, you know, you don't get any more scum than Donald Trump himself, right? See, everything he says reflects on who he is. You know, this pedophile that's in power, right? Because they're all pedophiles, every last one of them. And that's what King Bibi holds over him, right? So that he has to do the biddings of King Bibi. And then King Bibi himself, you know, is going to be punished for war crimes and for going against the Israeli state itself. They're holding him, you know, in court. But in order to put those things off, he, of course, has to be at war, right? As long as the Israeli state is at war, they can't go on with the trial. So he's doing everything he can to stay out from behind the bars, too. You know, so both between those two, man, you know, they're just dragging this war on. You know, so the war is on another 60 days. That's what he tells Congress, right? So, you know, 60 days because you can't declare war without congressional approval, except for that 60-day period, right? So, like everything else, well, you know, his new declaration of war, which we already knew that there was no ceasefire to begin with. The whole thing was stalling, right? Because like everything else, though, Iran had already wiped him out. Well, now Iran's using something better. Hypersonic missiles, right? 200 million of these things exist, right? The number of them, 200,000 hypersonic missiles that will be used. Mostly it's going to come against Babylon the Great, right? Because that was the hammer of the whole earth. So we already see these things being used. And eventually, they're going to have nuclear warheads on them, right? Because Satan II missiles have 72 of them warheads. You know, alone, 4 Satan II missiles would take out all the command of the U.S. in just the deployment of those. And like everything else, so there's nothing they can do to intercept a Satan II missile. So, hey man, in 1 hour this place will come to naught, right? So, hey, you know, these Edomites are now starting to get a dose of everything, right? You know, because how deliciously they've lived, right? You know, the fear of everything. And these people don't even want this war. That's the funny thing about it, right? But they just won't admit that their king has failed them, right? You know, King Trump, all hell, right? But guess what? He's bringing hell upon you, right? Because the Most High said he would give them over to a fierce king, and a cruel Lord shall rule over them. And we know who that is. That's talking about Nero 47. Donald Trump himself. You know, because he doesn't give a shit about you. He's made that blatant and bold in every way possible that he doesn't give a shit about you, doesn't give a shit about anyone. He's only in it for those bankers, you know, the Israeli state. And then we had the death of Lindsey Graham, right? Senator Lindsey Graham, you know, one of the greatest of all these warmongers, right? Yeah, he just died suddenly, right? I wonder if he got vaccinated, right? I'm pretty sure he did. You know, pulmonary embolism was the reason because he spent too long on that flight after he met with Zelensky. Now, there's rumor going around that, you know, Russia killed him, that Russia, you know, killed him while he was in Kiev. I don't think that's true. I think that pulmonary embolism, I believe that story is the actual story, right? But they want to keep the controversy going, right? Because, you know, it's all about, you know, false flags. And so Trump has already named his false flag, right? That they're going to try to assassinate him, you know. So, you know, trying to get up all this propaganda, right, as a reason to go to war, you know, so that way the people will approve it. People ain't going to approve it, you know, because everybody knows that, you know, you're dealing with, you're just doing it on behalf of King Bibi. You're doing it on behalf of the Israeli state. Iran is not a threat, you know. There's no nuclear threat. You say over and over again that they have nuclear weapons. Or now you're trying to say that they have chemical weapons because King Bibi's now throwing the narrative out there that they have weapons of mass destruction. Just like Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad. Same shit, but on a different day. He's using weapons against his own people, right? You know? Hey, man, you can't undo what you just saw. You know, in the, you know, all the streets were flooded with people mourning their leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. You know, the turnout was just so marvelous in such a way. And Donald Trump was all butthurt. And, you know, he even went on to say that, you know, his funeral would be so much bigger. How egotistical is that? most people be rejoicing. Because if they're rejoicing at the death of Senator Lindsey Graham, how much more with Donald Trump, right? Who's nothing more than a Zionist shill, and everybody knows that he's a Zionist. He's married to Melinda, right? Who just happens to be one of the greatest Zionists of all. She's actually Amalek, and we know King King Trump, whatever he wants to call himself, right? Chump, we call him. He fits himself to be a king, right? He believes that he's better than everybody else. And pretty much so, he's got an ego so big. So, he just wants to be worshipped. But they're not worshiping him. They're damning him, Most people actually hate him. Unless you watch Fox News, they paint a different picture, right? So he lives in a fantasy world of Fox News, where everybody worships him, And you have your parrots out there. But that's a minority group. Yeah, you got your Ku Klux Klan, you got all those parrots out there that, just imitate and repeat everything that he says, Kind of reminds me of Fall Repeat, one of them wrestlers that said that, right? Because the whole thing's like a WWE ring anyways. That's all Trump is a for lack of a better words, a failed entertainer, because he's not that entertaining unless you have other people there. Kind of like if you watch Adam Sandler and he directed his own shit, like Funny People, it's not that funny. That was a terrible movie, but when others are directing it, Adam Sandler's pretty good. See, that's just it. These people are actors, and they're following a Hollywood script. But on his own, he's not a very good actor. Man, he revealed that, this week, by tomorrow, that they'll be out of stocks. They'll be out of stockpiles. That pretty much, that's it. They will have depleted everything. But this is what's going on. Hypersonic missiles are wiping out the U.S. bases as they continue their attacks against Iran. Iran is wiping them out.
All right, welcome to the show, y'all. Hope everybody out there is having a great day. Prepare yourselves. I'm back. I'm in the driver's seat here, and a lot of bad stuff is happening, to put it simply. So in just a second, U.S. bases are burning to the ground in the Middle East, as it appears like a ground invasion is being planned by the Trump regime. We now have chaos erupting and all hell breaking loose, and us and Iran returning fire, and the Gulf countries getting hit as well. And it's basically like there was never a ceasefire, there was never a memorandum of understanding. We are right back to square one, except this time the strategic oil reserve is near the bottom. Okay, so it is as bad as you think it is. It's actually worse than that. Okay, so
yep, the strategic reserves are gone.
Continues to collapse as he now has a sixth visit to the doctor. A sixth visit. He's pretending like it was yet another physical, which is not a thing to take a physical in that short of a time frame. Clearly lying about that. We also have Ro Khanna being held at gunpoint by psycho Israeli occupiers, seemingly opening his eyes to the depravity of the terrorist rape state known as Israel. And then also, later on, we have the truth about Lindsey Graham is finally coming out. It took literally less than 24 hours after he departed this world for some people he engaged in sexual activities with to make their voices known and tell you the truth about who this man is and what he does. So we'll talk about all that and more. You guys know the drill, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Lindsey Graham was a pedophile, and how much more of a pedophile is Donald Trump, right? And that's what he's trying to keep hidden, but everybody knows about it. Everybody knows about the Epstein class, right? I mean, the whole operation is called Operation Epstein Fury for a reason. Because everybody knows that these are pedophiles, and that's all that they're trying to do is, put that away. Trying to clean up his image, because that's all Donald Trump wants to be, is worshipped. He wants to be worshipped as their king, and he's going to do everything he can to keep that image going, right? And to manipulate the stock markets, although you can't really manipulate them too much more with a war going on. So, gas prices, well, you don't even got to worry about that, right? If you've already depleted the stockpiles, well, shit, it's just going to be hard to even get it. You just won't be able to get it. That's even worse than high gas prices, right? Just the availability, the rarity of it, which is all part of the New World Order. You'll own nothing and be happy, right? Because pretty much so, they're going to regulate everything. You already know that Gavin Newsom's already following in this step, right? Because he's got taxes for every mile you drive. An extra tax within the gas, right? We're paying well over $5 a gallon here in California. People are bitching about it being like $3.89 over there, but we're paying over $5 over here, because like everything else, so got a fierce king, cruel lord ruling over us, right? And then you got Newsom on top of that, and Newsom says, right, and he's got even more taxes coming, because he's on his way out, no doubt about it. He's on his way out. He actually wants to run for the presidency, right? As if this place is going to be around in 2028. Look at everything that's happening, man. I really expect everything to go down by next year. But things are going to really accelerate this year. They're going to push the MLTB because, you know how I know that? Because we have the apostles over us, right? They tell you that, especially Apostle Tahar is telling you straight out the gate that they're going to push the MLTB really hard. Will this be the year? It's a possibility. Think about it, though. The economic woes, if they're out of fuel, there's going to be shortages everywhere leading into 2027. And they already have legislature in there, right? Because like everything else, so there's always, executive orders that's being made, right? And he can just do whatever he wants to without congressional approval, right? So he got another 60 days, So, hey, World War III, it's still on. It's been World War III for quite some time. And Russia, because Elder Brother Malcolm had already brought this out. Russia has already been deploying troops into Lebanon, but also into Iran as well, because they did take out a strategic bridge, in the recent strikes, right? So, like everything else, so that those strategic bridges that were taken out was how China was going to be able to import, armaments to go back to Iran. So they cut off that supply line. That's why they struck the bridge. So like everything else, now cargo planes, had to be escorted with jets, to protect them. So Russia's entering into the war. No doubt about it. It's a lot more than intelligence. And we're going to see a lot more of Russia involved. Plus, like everything else, though, we know also about the secret deal to run a new pipeline, because indefinitely the strait is closed, because Iran has already said that you're not going to get the strait open by war or threats of war, that's not going to reopen the strait. So Trump thinks that he's going to send troops in there to try to take the strait, to try to take Karg Island and take all that area. He believes he can actually do this by weakening that area, so that's why, the next 60 days of war, he's going to try to weaken all that. And of course, the Israelis, they're not going to do a whole lot. The U.S. is going to exhaust everything, because the Israelis, well, they've already been checkmated in Lebanon. Oh, and there's something new. The Yemen has been attacked. Saudi Arabia carried out an attack against Sana'a airport, and Yemen also returned fire against Saudi Arabia's airport. So that's all started up as well, because like everything else, so that other Suez Canal is going to be shut down very soon because of the infighting. But they're thinking that we're going to go after Yemen as well, and Hezbollah. See, this whole thing's already spilled over, right? It's already spilled over because we already know how the war got started on October 7, 2022, right? When the Israeli state, pretty much did a false flag, and deliberately, had Hamas, because Hamas works for the Israeli state, don't get it twisted. They work for the Israeli state, and they staged this false flag event. And that's what launched the war in Gaza. And like everything else, though, everybody sees it. And the Israelis are being called out for it, right? Everybody knows that the real scum of the earth are these Israelis, that the Israeli state are the scum of the earth. So, they're trying to get the image off of them, right, by saying that Iran is scum. Because Donald Trump doesn't like it when you call out his cronies as, pedophiles over there in the Israeli state, And they're trying to make laws to where you can't really speak against them, right? But you might get labeled with, anti-you-know-what, just because you're against the Israeli state, you're against Zionism, and I'm surprised that YouTube is still allowed on the platform, but you see, like everything else, so that's the Most High allowing it, because we're still in the part of mercy. But eventually, all this is going to be taken down. Look at what's going on in Europe. It's already happening that, they're busting people just for watching RT over there. Yeah, for watching RT news. And pretty much, though, you're not even allowed to have VPNs over there, which is to be able to surf the net anonymously. They're cutting down on that. So, like everything else, so. And these data centers, well, now they're going into reservations and wiping them out to build these AI data centers, these spy centers, because the people stood up against have the AI data centers. These rich Edomites that live in nice neighborhoods, while we live in the projects, these Edomites complain because of the noise coming from the AI data centers. So guess what? They decide, oh, well, we're just going to go after all the reservations and we're going to build our AI data centers there. You notice how the name is now AI? We were talking about 5G towers back in 2020, when they did the coronavirus hoax, shutting down everything just so they could build the 5G towers. Well, it was all about the 6G and 7G, but they're not really calling it. They're now just using the term AI. AI data centers. Oh, AI chatbot, AI this, AI that. But it was already there before. But just making systems a lot more faster, and you got these super robots doing all the work. So there's no worth left. Assembly centers are being set up for all the automobiles, which, like everything else, so they already had a plan to get rid of fossil fuels to begin with. Well, they're doing a pretty good job of that, right? So the only ones that are going to be driving is going to be a very few. Yeah, the electric vehicles, but they're going to be so fucking limited because that's going to be the 20-minute cities, right? And there's a chip in the car that can just stop it. They have chips in all the newer cars that pretty much just, they can look at the dashboard, they can tell if you made a bad decision, all that, and they'll just shut it down. Ford does it, and a whole bunch of others have done it, right? So, like everything else, though, everything's about to change. All hell's about to break loose, and it's going to be very, very hard to travel. And that's what they want, is get everybody, used to lockdowns. That's why 2020 was part of the Great Reset, but the Great Reset is when they get rid of all the oil and people aren't able to commerce anymore, right? If you can't commerce, which is by way of travel, guess what? You can't buy and sell. Think about that, though. The way of commercing has always been by being able to drive somewhere or take the bus or whatever. But if all that's taken away, or it's just very, very, very limited, like the 20-minute cities, then they already got it all in motion. See, this was set in motion a long time ago. And that's what 2020 was about, was at least trying to get it started, right? Well, now you can say we're up to 7G, 8G, but they're just not calling it that. AI data centers. To where everything you have to have permission for, right? And it causes all, because we're there. We're there now, Pretty much so eventually declaration is going to be happening out of order out of chaos, and they're going to usher it in. That's how the MOTB is going to be ushered in. Right there. You see? They already have everything leading to it, So, it's a war that they cannot win. It's inevitable that the U.S. is losing. And that they're going to be defeated over there. They didn't win the war against Iran. They didn't wipe out their Navy. They didn't wipe out their missile defense. They didn't wipe out their Air Force. And guess what? They certainly ain't going to even come close to exhausting Russia. They've been trying to do that in Ukraine for years. Ever since, Biden, 2020, 2 and up. 2022, they tried to weaken Russia, and it didn't work. You see, like everything else, though, there's a plan. The Most High is making the Medes and the Persians rise up. So, like everything else, though, there's order out of chaos. And there's fuel shortages in Russia, too. Things ain't better. This is a worldwide event. The whole system is about to collapse, and we're seeing the downfall of that. And that's how this is going to be ushered in. See, the system ain't going to be around much longer. Not to mention there's going to be famines everywhere because there's no supply coming because you can't travel. Once you eliminate travel, because there's not enough electric vehicles to bring in what's needed for the grocery stores, for your supermarkets, well, guess what? You've got the crisis. It's all going to be led by the National Guard, who's going to have everything, because that's what the result petroleum is all about. It's for the military. But guess what? It's going to the military. It ain't really going to the people. The National Guard is not going to have everything going to people. And that's all on the universal basic income. Those that cooperate. Those that have taken the implantable micro CHIP. Because it's going to happen. All this is being set up. And we can see the rollout of this by 2027. Possibly even this year. I'm not going to rule out that it wouldn't happen this year. They're going to heavily push it. So, like everything else, though, we're in the time now that they're going to mandate this, We're going to see it in our lifetime, To all you naysayers, guess what? It's coming. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. What's the image of the beast? That's the New World Order, right? Revelation 13 and 15. And that the image of the beast should both speak and cause us many who would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So you don't want to bow down to the New World Order. Guess what? You're going to be cut off. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads. That's the implantable micro CHIP. That no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So if you ain't got it, you ain't going to be able to commerce. You just won't be a part of it. You won't be a part of the system, because in order to receive your universal basic income, to be able to do anything, you're going to have permission. And that's what these smart cities are about. And that's why, the push for electric vehicles, because it's all going to be controlled by the electric grid, which is going to be very limited. There's a lot of people that ain't going to make it. A lot of people are about to die very soon, just from starvation alone. Just from not being able to drink enough water, because the water, they're using human feces right now just for fertilizer because of the shortages. And these shortages are going to continue because the strait ain't going to be open. This is affecting global oil trade. Revelation chapter 14, verse 8. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon has fallen, has fallen. You saw the imagery, on the 4th of July, the 250th so-called anniversary, right? And you saw the guy fall right down into the ground, into the bleachers, And you also saw other things that were symbolic. This place, it's sunken, It's a sinking ship. That great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Because everybody all around the world has joined in with Babylon and all of its whoredoms, especially sodomy and all the other things, because this place is also known as Sodom and Egypt. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and its image, and receive its mark in his forehead or in his hand, the implantable microchip, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And that is ultimate destruction, coming from the big chariot as well as all the other chariots, just destroying this place, as well as the nuclear missiles, the hypersonic missiles, the 200 million of them. And shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Because Yahushua will return to destroy this place once and for all, to finish what was already begun. You see, like everything else, the harbinger of death is Yahushua himself. He's the bringer of death. And death and destruction is coming to Babylon. This is the indignation of the Most High, that he has for Babylon. And for Amalek. He hath the indignation for Amalek forever. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in its image, and whosoever receive the mark of its name. So it's very clear what's going to happen to all those that are naysayers, that pretty much, take the MOTB. The Most High doesn't want, they're ultimately going to be caused. They're going to be in this lake of fire. They're going to be the cause of his wrath, pretty much. Because it's not like we weren't out here warning day in, day out, weekly, daily, daily edification, every day, we're going out, we're teaching, and we're also doing it in home lessons. But there's a time when we're no longer going to be warning, and things are just going to be happening, and you're seeing it accelerate, So, we have a lot to look forward to, but we also are prepared. We fear the Most High on what he could do. We don't want to be caught up in this, right? We don't want to be caught up in what's coming. Because like everything else, so these said perils, many people are going to die in the said perils even before the lake of fire happens. Some of us will be martyred. I'd rather be martyred than what's about to take place, with the Most High himself sending Yahushua to finish everything. See, like everything else, so Esau is done. Stick a fork in their ass and turn them over, they're done. Because pretty much this place is going to be well done. It's going to come in remembrance no more. That's what's coming to Babylon. And to the rest of Edom. But this is the high place of Esau, Edom. And it's going to come in blaze. It's going to go out. You're going to see the greatest fireworks ever when this place gets turned into the lake of fire. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatam, Jehovah Elect, Shalom.